Let's see.
Wherever you've been all my life.
Yeah, right. I'm testing it. This is a tremendous program.
And you do the checking out of
Well, I'm the middle.
All right, you ready?
Ready.
All right, let's talk about. I'm not ready to talk about phone systems yet, but when we do, I'm going to show you how I use these three devices. One's called a Magic Jack, one's called Line 2, and one's obviously my cell phone. Anybody here have an expensive home line that they don't use anymore? Okay. For me, for example, this is the last four digits of my home phone number, or it used to be. Well, including my 11-year-old, we all have cell phones now. So nobody ever calls us on our home phone unless they want something like,
Exciting.
well, a bill collector, a Mitt Romney calls me, you name it. Solicitors. Anybody.
Despite the do not call us.
Well, political campaigns aren't
That's true.
subject to that. But yeah, we don't have very many calls coming through our home phone now because everyone's got our cell phones. But I still have my home phone number that I've had for, I don't know how long I've been there in Georgia, is 1997. So I didn't really want to get rid of that number because so many people have it. Friends that I haven't talked to for years, they still have my phone number. I haven't talked to them for 6, 7, 8 years. They have that number. I don't want them to call and go, that number's been disconnected. So I kept that number, and I'll show you how I do that. But let's talk about strategically investing for a second. I'm going to leave it right here. Can you all see that? I'm going to leave it here so I can skip through some of this. Strategically investing. The first thing that you're going to want to do is learn how to invest, or not so much how, where to invest, and why. Okay? Now there's some sites out there that will give you the same information, but I don't know what they are, so I'm going to show you what I know. There's two sites in particular that I want you to pay attention to. Really one site and one app. One site is called SchoolDigger.com. SchoolDigger.com. And the other app is called SiteWise. And then there's another app called Trulia, which is also a site, but I'll show you some of that as well. Site, SiteWise. Here, do you need a pen?
I got one now. It's red, but it didn't work.
Well, this one's black.
It's okay.
Okay. Okay. SiteWise is a demographics app, but I'm sure you can go on and get Census Bureau information. Just Google it. But this is important stuff because any time you invest, you got to figure out what are you going to do. I mean, how many people have heard that phrase? You begin with the end in mind, and you got to know what you're going to do with the property before you buy it, because otherwise you may get stuck with it. All right, so you're going to have to figure out what you're going to do with this before you sell it. All right, before you buy it. Excuse me. Number two, good schools. How many people have heard good schools are the number one thing to look for? Not true. Not true. You'll hear me use this word all day long. It depends. Depends on what your exit strategy is. If I'm buying and holding in primarily a rental area, schools aren't that much of an importance for me. Because in a primarily rental area, it's not that big of an issue. Because most people rent where they live, where they've grown up, and they want to stay around family, and so on and so forth. That's primarily why people will rent. If it's traditionally what I would call a higher than percentage average of rentals in the neighborhood. Demographics, job stability, and growth. We're going to talk about basically the top two. But I'm going to show you. This is an app I use. This is a lead that I used the other night. Let's see if I have any new ones. Nope. Let's see. Here's one right here. This is one I just got. What's the date? 7/20. What was that? Yesterday? Is that yesterday? 7/20. Today the 21st. All right. We should pay attention to this. There's the street. There's the address. The estimated home value is $20,000. I know that'll. For you, just do yourself a favor so you don't mentally break down here. Just add a 0 on the end of that. Okay? All right, estimated repairs, $15,000. Okay, here's the reason they're selling. Home has been totally vandalized, needs electric, plumbing, sheetrock, etc. Large master with walk-in closet, separate bath, basement apartment. Fence was removed by vandals. Need out from under this one fast. We'll take any offer. I paid cash for it and had started renovation, but now it needs everything. Who's going to buy that?
I'm good smart investor.
Oh, wait a minute, but if there's obviously a problem with vandalism, you're going to run through the same thing, aren't you?
Maybe. But am I going to hold them? No. I'm going to buy it, and I'm going to flip it to somebody else that's going to have to go through that issue. There's a lot of ways you can get around that. You can have a contractor that, because some of these guys that I sell to, have their contractor sleep there. And they pay them extra for that.
With a guard
'Cause-
dog.
Huh?
With a guard dog.
Yeah, but once somebody's living there, and they see a truck in the driveway, it's usually when a property's vacant. And it's usually kids or people that want to go in, steal the copper, and go buy drugs with it, because the amount of copper that you get from a house is not that much money. I mean, that's what always kills me. Do you have a problem with people taking air conditioning units up here?
HVAC?
The AC unit outside.
Oh, yeah.
In Atlanta, it's rampant.
Yes.
What they do is they take the four sides, they let the AC, the housing, go, and they pull out the copper in it. Do you realize that that $3,000 AC that they just destroyed will give them about $12 worth of
Oh, my God.
copper?
I just put $12 inside of it.
Well, that's what I said. I said, you know what, in the future I'm going to take and I'll put one of those, in case of theft, break glass and put a $20 bill in there. You know, please don't take my AC unit, just break the glass and take the $20 bill. They'll take both.
Say, well, yeah, you're right, definitely right.
But I thought that was pretty funny. All right, so here's what I do. Let's walk through this like I would normally walk through this in a traditional. This is a real lead. I just got it yesterday. I haven't called the woman. Bless you. There's the address. So when I see this, I haven't even looked at this, so I'm going to hit the map on there. Now I'm in the hotel here. I'm 600 miles away. So there's the street. I'm going to click the little red button. There's the house.
Thank you.
House looks great on the outside. So let's take a look at the neighborhood. What's the neighborhood look like?
Can you do that with Google?
I do that with the iPad, which basically integrates with Google Street Maps.
Okay.
Now, if you try to do it on a laptop, it's different. Right now, I'm only using my finger. If you try it on Google, if you try it on a laptop, it's not as easy.
Right.
And it's not as cool and not as functional. All right? I can actually drive up the neighborhood and look around. I mean, if you look at this, this is not a bad neighborhood. The reason this happened is because, A, I can tell you, she didn't get the rehab fixed fast enough. Okay? And she didn't put enough precautions in to keep people out while she's doing it. Like the AC unit. First thing I do is put an AC, I don't even put the AC unit in until we're done. Okay? I then put a cage around it. Okay? I will put burglar bars up around the windows until I'm done with it, until I get it rented. If the renters want me to leave it, I'll leave them. If they don't, I take them off, move them to the next house. I only have to pay for them once. And generally they go from house to house for the most part. I have different sizes on them. Okay? Because you don't want to put a all new electrical system in, only to have them come in the next night and rip it all back out. Yes,
Burglar bars are $38 a piece at Home Depot.
there you go.
Wow.
Okay, so is this an area right here that looks
Yes.
nice?
Yeah.
Okay? This is not an area that I would look and go, oh my goodness, it's a war zone. It's not a war zone. Okay? It's an inexperienced investor that didn't really know what they were doing, unfortunately. All right, so then I'm going to go up here and I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to hit select all, and I'm going to hit copy. Now she said, make me an offer. Well, I can promise you, what do you think I'm going to make her?
An offer.
I'm going to make her an offer, all right.
One she's never heard of before.
One that's going to make her toes curl up, but it'll get it off her hands. Now, here's Zillow. Now, this is the process in which I'm doing. I do this every single time. So you may want to, off to the side on one of your notes, you may want to write lead, Zillow, and I'll show you some other things in a second. And again, we're kind of skipping around a little bit, but this will give you an idea. Now, how many people think Zillow is awful to use for comps? Tammy, why?
They're way off. They're way high and way low, all over the board.
What is?
The values.
What are you looking at?
Sold.
They're exactly right on. Solds are solds.
The souls aren't always
Existing
updated.
is-
Huh?
The souls aren't always.
I'm not disagreeing with you. I'm not disagreeing with you. But most people look at Zillow and they use the Zestimate of what what Zillow thinks the value should be. That, my friend, is garbage. Don't ever use it. But remember, I'm in the hotel right now. This lady said, make me an offer. I need to sell it quickly. Do you think she's going to wait around for a week and a half for me to wait to get back to Atlanta to make her an offer? Do you think this house is going to be gone before that?
Yeah.
Absolutely. So, do you think for me, this information is good enough to put it under contract? How many people say yes?
It's a
How many
tool.
people say no? You say no.
No, I say yes. It's
Okay.
a tool.
Okay. So let's take a look. This is Adele Street, and I gotta find Adele Street on here. It's right here. There is one here that says 500 and, let's see what that means. 585,000. That I guarantee you is a typo. It is probably 5,800. 5885. So they have 585,000. I promise you that's a typo. You got a 32,000 sold price, $25,000 asking price. Here's one that they're asking 37, but that's not sold. That's asking. Here's one for 120. That's probably right. Here's one for 126. That's probably right. Here's one for 12,000. Whoops. Here's one for another one for 12,000. 12,000. 32,000. 7,500. What kind of offer would you make this woman? 7,500?
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's probably where I would start. Because I will probably be able to sell this somewhere in the high teens without touching it. 15, 16, 17. Okay? But let's just use this for example for a second. Let's say I don't want to touch this because I'm afraid of the area. And let's say you're new to the area and you don't want to touch it either because you don't know the area well enough. Could that be your A or V to sell it to an investor? Because that 12,000 is an investor, I promise you that. Do you think you can find somebody for $12,000?
Oh, yeah.
Sure. Yes, Tim.
I have a question, because I'm sure a new investor would be thinking this. If you can pick it up for $7,500 and not touch it, do anything to it, how are you gonna turn around and sell it to another investor for $15,000, $16,000?
Because people don't know what I know.
Because he got the deal.
Because, number one, if this were the only, if 7,500 was riddled throughout this whole thing, then I would probably say I can't get more than 7,500 for that house. But it's not. There's a 12,000, there's a 38,000, there's a 32,000. That house was in pretty decent shape from the outside. It had good curb appeal.
Alright, I see what you're saying.
Okay, so it wasn't like it was completely boarded up and run down and there's, prison bars on it and it looks ugly. Okay? Again. But I'll show you. So now I take that same information.
How do you know that's still a valid picture? That wasn't taken 2 hours.
Doesn't matter. I'm 500 miles away. Just because you put something under contract doesn't mean you have to buy it.
That's right.
But if you don't get it under contract, you can never buy it.
Exactly. If you don't get it under contract, you don't stand a chance. Okay? This is not a bank. There's a difference here. This is not a bank. I can go to this woman, put it under contract with the stipulation subject to partner's approval. And that's really the only special stipulation I need to add to that. And I can do this all by the phone, and then I call someone there that I know and say, hey, can you run by and take a look at this house? Take some pictures for me, take a look at the neighborhood, and let me know if this is a decent enough purchase. So, when I'm this far away. Now, granted, if I'm there, I'm going to go look at it. And it's going to make it a little easier. But, if this thing were next to a prison, okay, or I looked at the street and I had a bunch of boarded up houses, okay, and I went up and down the street from here, does it make sense for me to get in my car right now and go down and do it? Absolutely not. So that's an easy decision for me. But based on what you see here, it's free and clear. She said, make me an offer. What do you have to lose? Gas money. And you're out anyways. Who knows? You maybe roll up on 2 or 3 others when you're driving the neighborhood. Okay? So you lose, the worst thing that you have to lose is gas money at this point. So if I put this under contract for $7,500, in my contract, which I will show you in a bit, I don't give them earnest money. I don't. Because I don't want them to run off with my earnest money, even if it's $1. I put in parentheses on my purchase and sale agreement, earnest money to be held at whatever attorney's office I use for my closing, or a title company, whatever. Okay? And they just have a blank check of mine for $100 that sits on their desk. Okay? So think about this. Remember, this is real. This is real life. This is a lead that I got yesterday. How would you work this lead? Somebody tell me. What would you do? What's the next step in the process?
After the contract.
Huh?
After what?
No.
Check for any liens?
Nope.
Email her a offer.
No. You have to figure out if you're even going to be involved or not. Because the problem with most people at this point, they haven't pre-screened their deals well enough, and they end up running all over the place doing all this, and it doesn't work out, and they've wasted all this time. Remember, I spend literally about 15 minutes doing my due diligence, maybe 5 to 10 minutes. Then I go look at it if it meets my criteria. What are some of the other things that you should be looking at? Because what's your exit strategy on this? What could your exit strategy be? Flip it. Okay, that's one. You buy it, and you just flip the contract, right?
Sign it. Yeah.
Assign it. You could do a double close if you had the money, or if you had an attorney that would be willing to do a simultaneous close, or a title company. Do y'all know what that is?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What else could you do with it?
Very good.
Rehab it and rent it. Now, could you buy and flip it? Meaning buy it, fix it, and flip it.
Yes.
Depends
I don't
on.
know that neighborhood.
Who's going to buy it in that neighborhood?
Investors.
Investors.
Investors. Exactly. So it's not going to be a homeowner that's going to do that. So, Do you think now there's a difference in rehab that you can do? If you're going to do that, if you're going, you can buy it and flip it. All right, but there's some other things that I'm going to teach you how to do. One of them is if you're going to buy it and flip it, you're going to fix it up based on a Section 8 type rehab to get it Section 8 ready. You all have Section 8 here, right? They may not call it Section 8, but
Is it the US?
okay. I love Section 8. 5 years ago, I'd have told you there's no way in hell I'm doing Section 8. But now, I love it. Because guaranteed rent every month. And what I can do is I can fix it up, Section 8 ready, put a tenant in there, make $400 a month, positive cash flow at least. I can keep it, and then as soon as I finish it, I put it out on the multiple listing again as an investor special, total turnkey. And guess what I do with the price? That price now went from $12,000 up to $30,000. Did you see sales in there for $30,000? Yes or no?
Yes.
Okay? Do you think there's investors out there that will spend $30,000 for a cash property that's cash flowing at least $400 a month?
Sure.
Absolutely. Can you see the difference between a normal buy and flip and a turnkey to an investor? Now, if I buy it for $7,500, let's say I put another 10 in it to fix it up, get it Section 8 ready. I'm into it for how much? $17,500. And I sell it for $30,000. What's the difference?
Holding costs and...
No. What's the difference in $12,500, right? I make $12,500. Okay? If it doesn't sell, if I put it out to multiple listing and it doesn't sell, what am I worse off? No, because guess what? What am I getting now? $400 a month cash flow. Can you see the benefit there of doing it that way? There's nothing wrong. If you're a buy and hold kind of person, I would encourage you to do all of that all day long. Put all your properties out there at a much higher price on the multiple listing, even if you don't want to sell them. Because someone's going to come along and make you an offer you can't refuse. And guess what? That's fine. You just go buy a new one. See how you make money in this? Now, I can also buy it for $7,500, not do a darn thing with it, and sell it for $12,000, probably pretty darn quick within a couple days, few days, 5 days, right? So how much money would I have made if I sold it for $12,000, bought it for $7,500? $4,500. So maybe I'll sell it for $12,500, make $5,000. So $5,000 versus $12,000. No work versus a fair amount of work. See the difference? But it's still a deal. There's still a deal there. Your object is to be a transaction engineer, to find whatever lead comes at you, do something with it. Question?
Why did you dismiss owner occupants as a potential buyer?
Well, all right. Let's look at that, which is where I was going to the first thing. All right, so let's take a look at that lead, and let's go to a app called Sitewise. This is what I'm talking about. So I come up here. There's the address, because remember I copied it. Once I copied it, I can paste it wherever I want on here. All right, so I hit search. There's the address right there. So I click on the little blue arrow to the right of that, and it's going to retrieve that. Now it's going to put a 15-minute drive time circle around it, or not really a circle. You can do a circle, but I like to see the drive time. I like to see where it is. Okay, so that's 15 minutes. Now I can do a search on all of these, but let's do population summary at this point. All right, population's primarily 50-50 male and female. Okay, you can come and see what the age percentages are. Probably these three right here in the middle, so the average age is between 25 and 44 that's living there. Okay? You can see the population by race. See what's the demographics of this. So let me see if I can move over here. Okay, so I can see this is 26% white, 65% African American. What is this? 3% Asian, and that's it. Basically, it's other race. Okay. So what's the predominant race in that area?
African American.
African American. Okay, that's my customer, primarily. All inclusive, but I can get a good demographics as to who my customer is and what I'm looking for. So now I go. So then I go back out and let's go down to housing. Whoops. Let's go. Change category to housing. Now this tells me it's an 81% occupancy rate. That means 20% of the houses down in that 15-minute drive time is vacant. It's high. Okay? Only 30% of those have a mortgage. 45% of that 81% is rentals. So, do I stand a better chance of renting it or selling it to a homeowner? Remember, only 29% of the people down there have a mortgage. So it's either free and clear or they're renting. Only 29% of the people have a mortgage. According to this, 29%. Only 7% own it free and clear. So what's the rest? I'm just giving you the statistics. Okay? So, vacant.
It says 75% are owner occupied
Where is that at? Where do you see that?
at the
No,
top.
80, this is occupied, meaning there's 81% occupied. So if you have 100 homes, 81 of them have somebody in it.
Okay.
Not certain owners.
92%.
Not necessarily owners, just occupied.
Okay.
It's a mixture of owners versus, okay, of that 81%, 29% of them actually have a mortgage on the home.
How many are owner occupied? What
It's
percent?
based on the numbers. You see these numbers, it's just a percentage. Okay?
Uh-huh.
Renter occupied, okay? It doesn't give you a percentage over here, I'm not sure why. Here's your owner occupied.
Well, it's because that owner occupied is broken down by the percentages underneath that
Oh
category.
yeah, right there. So you've got 36% owner occupied. Technically, you're supposed to be able to add these two numbers together, or these three numbers together to get the 81%. I don't know if that actually works in this case,
It
but.
does. 29 and 7 and 45 and
Okay,
61.
so that's where you get the 81%. So you got 7% of those people have it free and clear, 29% actually have a mortgage, so 36% of the population, or 36% of these people are owner occupied. Okay?
That's a low rate.
That's a really low
It's a
rate.
big rental area.
So it's a huge rental area. So to answer your question, why wouldn't you do that? If I didn't know this information and I went in going, oh, I'm going to owner occupy it, do you think I would have a hard time or a harder time than if I went in with the exit strategy of I'm going to buy it and sell it to an investor or buy it and rent it? Yes.
Another thing is you have to go through the process of them qualifying for the loan and the bank
Absolutely.
and everything like that. Whereas if I get an investor, I can get them to put down, an owner occupied, they're going to come in with as little amount down
Sure.
as possible. With an investor, I can get them to put down 50% and I can take back a note.
An investor, they're going to buy it all cash from me, the whole thing, period. It's all cash. Now, if I wanted to owner finance it, I could.
There's benefits.
There's benefits, but if I'm flipping this thing, because I rolled towards the flipping because a lot of people want to make quick money. Okay, a lot of times they don't see the value in holding on to a property right now. They would rather just make a $20,000, a $10,000 profit and move on. Anybody? Who would like that? Okay, I mean, that's a lot of people. Some people want the positive cash flow, so back to your no maintenance, no everything if you want to finance it to an investor.
I can get back the money I put into it and then get
Absolutely.
monthly payments on a regular basis.
Absolutely. So there's an advantage to all of that. Okay? But do you see where my mind is going? Yes or no?
Yeah.
Okay? So what am I doing with this property now? Buy and hold. Or buy and flip to an investor, right? So it's not really going to be one that's I'm going to put in my arsenal to buy and fix up, make it someone's dream home and sell it to a homeowner. It's not going to work. Okay? So that's where I look. Now you can also go into, let's see, and this will also be a determining factor. Go into School Digger, come up here, and find the school. Let's put their address in there.
Unless you're going with a person that is already straight with the bank and got all their qualifications and approvals, you're
Yeah.
slowing down the process so much.
Yep.
Time is money.
Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put this in there. There's 100 schools found in the general area. All right, this is what they look like. Now, what I'll look at pretty fast is I'll take these out because most people in that area aren't going to send their kids to private school. They're not going to be there. So let's look at 0 being the worst, 5 being the best schools. What do you see?
Where's your actual property?
It's somewhere in,
What are the
in
color
the center.
codes?
It's somewhere in the center. Okay? What do you see? I see a lot of zeros.
Yeah.
Okay? Now you can go and pinpoint it and so on and so forth. But I don't need to pinpoint that. I don't need to pinpoint where that school is because I see way too many zeros and ones. So is a homeowner going to go in and move in there and buy it? Are they really going to want to buy, and it's going to be predominantly what I would consider a lower middle income neighborhood that people just want to stay around the people they know and live in the areas that they're used to and comfortable with. It's going to close to town. You know what I'm saying? You all follow what I mean? What my line of thinking is? Okay? So my only exit strategy is to buy and flip it to another investor or buy and hold on to it. Okay? So what's next in the process? What do I need to know to evaluate this thing? How about what the rents are? Does that make sense? Where's my... So now, can we turn down the air? Anybody else warm in here?
Yeah, it's getting one.
Okay, so we're going to start a search for rent. I'm going to paste the address in there, hit search. It's going to tell me, let's see, where is Adele? Adele is somewhere in the middle here, right? Anybody see it?
What are you looking for?
Adele Street. Let's see, Adele. Well, let's assume, I don't want to spend time looking for it, but let's assume it's right here. So I can take this and go, okay, give me that area of rentals. Thank you. Okay, over here you will see bedrooms and baths, and because it's rentals, it'll tell me what they're asking for rent. Now, this one is she doesn't tell me how many bedrooms and baths. Oh yeah, it does. It's a 4-3. can look and scroll down and see these are only 3 bedrooms. So I can guarantee you I'm not getting $2,800 a month. But is it reasonable for me to get $900 a month? Because those are all 3 bedrooms. Especially on a Section 8. Is it reasonable? Can you all see that? Okay? Do you care? Okay? No, I'm saying you guys are dead. Is it too warm in here? Okay, so with that being said, now you have some that are 750, 700, but they're not 4 bedrooms. Those are 2 bedrooms. So you have a 4 bedroom. So think in terms of Section 8. Okay? And not so much if, I don't care if you want to be a Section 8 landlord or not. It doesn't matter. The person you sell it to may. So you got to be thinking, okay, how am I going to sell this thing? So I look at that and I say, okay, 700, or I mean, let's say $900 for a 4 bedroom. In Atlanta, I can guarantee you I'll get over 1,000. But let's use 900. Okay? Now, if I look at that property, let's see if they have it. See if they'll tell me how much taxes they pay. For 2011, she paid $355 in taxes. I know. Those of you up here go, holy cow.
It's like 10 minutes here.
Just, like I said, just throw a 0 on every number I give you on the end of it. I used to, when I would go to California, DC, larger cities that have higher dollars, I used to try to maneuver and add relevant data. It just became so hard. I just tell people, just add a 0 onto that. And that usually works. All right? So now I want to figure out, does this thing make sense? So here's the first time I'm going to use this. Remember, if I'm doing this, how long, if I wasn't talking to you folks, how long would it take me to go through everything I just showed you? 5 minutes. Okay? So now, here is the cash flow evaluator. I have 4 of these. I have one that's for cash flow only, or buy and hold. I have one that's an easy, what they call an easy offer maker, which is buy, fix, and flip for the retail purchase. I have one for wholesale lease options, and I have one for a sandwich lease option. Okay? These are different evaluators, which I've created. So, if I simply go in here, because would you agree that the comps in this area are all over the board? They range
Yes.
anywhere from $7,000 up to what? $35,000. Okay? How many people are afraid to death of the ARV and not knowing which ARV to use? Because it all comes back to that 4-letter word that Tammy said at the beginning of the day, which is what? Okay, you can participate. This is good. Fear. All right? What number would you use for an ARV in this? 7,500, right? Typically, because you're scared. Don't blame me. However, would that lose the deal? So let's, anybody hear the Mayo formula? Anybody know what that is? What is that? Can anybody tell me? Maximum allowable offer. What is that number? Okay, so if I have 7,500 as my ARV, what's 65% of that? Anybody have a calculator? Somebody do that number for me. Huh?
48.75.
48.75. All right. It needs how much in repairs?
You said 10,000.
Okay, so I said 10,000.
So she's gotta give it to you.
Do we see a problem with those numbers to begin with?
Upside down.
Don't work.
So this is the problem. Most investors will pass on this. Most investors will pass on this. Do you realize I purchased 9 houses in the last 35 days. I haven't touched one of them, and I've made over $50,000. in 30 days. A little over 30 days. All doing it just like that. Never touching them, never doing anything. Now, there's a reason why. Because of this thing right here. So, you can obviously, the Mayo formula doesn't work. Even if you use, let's say you use 35,000. Give me some numbers on this. 35 times 65 cents on the dollar. $22.75 minus 10,000, right? In repairs, so that's $12,750. Okay? If you want to make $5,000 on this deal, as a wholesale deal, right? You got to subtract that out too. All right? So here we go. So what am I at now?
7,750.
And that's at a top price of $35,000. Okay, so the Mayo formula can work in this case because you have comps all over the place. But what happens if they were $7,500, or $10,000, or $12,000 as the top, or $15,000 as the top? How many people let this thing fall? Everybody, because they don't see a place to make money. You got to look at it differently. I wanted you to take your blinders off, because here's what we're going to do. Let's take a look at this. Because in certain situations in this economy, that Mayo formula does not work. Because the numbers aren't. Now, as prices continue to raise and you get higher, then they work. But when you're in this low market, even here, it's all relative. It's all relative for all of us. So let's take a look at this. The only thing I pay attention to is what's going to make money. So, what's my income of this property? Rent-wise. What do we say? 900 conservatively. Taxes, how much was it? 375 was it?
300, I think.
Okay, so we'll say 350. I don't remember what the number was. On that property right there, I'll probably pay $700 in insurance
Really?
a year. Huh?
Yeah, well,
That's a lot, but that's what you'll pay.
yeah.
Okay? I'm also going to have a vacancy rate of 8.35%. Now, what does that mean?
1 month.
1 month and a rolling 12. So that's equivalent to $900 either in maintenance or lost rent. That's per year. Okay, so if I have a Section 8 tenant in there and it stays 3 years, but I do a few repairs over those 3 years, it's equivalent to the $900 a year. So that's where I take my maintenance into consideration and vacancy rate. You want to add, there's other stuff you can add down here if you are okay with it. I also put in an 8% management fee. Some of you may have someone else manage your properties, and it may be between 8, 9, 10, or even more, depending on what your management fees are here. Okay? I have so many properties, he only charged me 8%. But I know other people that pay 10%. I don't know what your management fees here down here. Same? Okay. So now, the net operating income on this property is $9,602 a year. That's your income. That's your income after all of those expenses have been taken out. You all see that? Forget about the required cap rate for a second. Now let's talk about interest rate on what you're going to, if you're going to borrow this money. Let's say I find a private lender and I want to borrow this money from them. What interest rate would you see is reasonable? 14? Not reasonable for a private. Hard money, yes. Private, not even close. 8, 10, sometimes even 12. But on a buy and hold, where should you go? What should you put on here? The lower the better. Okay?
6.
So let's be reasonable and say 8%. Okay? I'm going to put $10,000 in this, in repairs. That's my repairs. Whoops. Now, before we go any further, for this to be worth it to you, how much would you want on a monthly basis for cash flow wise, for you to be satisfied? 400? How many people say 300? Anyone say 300? Okay? Anyone say 200? Wouldn't recommend going anything less than 300, but I would stay at 400 probably. The system is real simple for me because it's all about cash. It's all about what you're getting. Forget about what the property is worth if you're buying and holding it. Okay, just take that number completely out. Because everybody, well, the value of the property, how many people in this room think the value of properties now are deflated? Artificially deflated. Because of the way the economy is. Do you think they're going to stay there?
No.
Of course not. So you have to have the right mindset going into these and knowing that, have some faith that they're going to go up. Okay? Now, if I want $400 a month, I simply follow along and say, that's the maximum I could pay for this property from an income basis. Forget about the, let's say the ARV was $100,000. Let's flip it a little bit. And say the value of this thing was $100,000. But as a buy and hold person, you want $400 a month. What's the most you could pay for this, even if it's worth $100,000? $26,000. That's the problem that most people have. When they look at cash flow, they look at the wrong numbers. They always put it on the value of the property, and they say, but no one's going to take my offer. If it's worth $100,000, no one's going to take my $26,000 offer. Yes, they will if you have the right person in front of you. Okay? And that's all evaluated. So $400 a month. Now, am I going to pay $26,000 for this house? No. But could I? And still make money? Yes or no?
Yes.
Yes, you can. You could be, based on the numbers, this is all math. If you want to make $400 a month, and that you're satisfied with $400 a month, you could pay $26,000 for this property. Now, anybody here buy based on a cap rate? Okay, what's a good cap rate for a property? Huh?
It's subjective. My cap rate is anywhere from 11 to 13.
Okay, 11 to 13% cap rate. Okay, if I gave you a 20% cap rate, would you be good with that? Okay, guess what? This property, based on income, if you didn't know what the value, because that's where the cap rate usually comes in commercial, because the value. They base it off of the income. Same type of principle here with a single family home. Forget the value for a second. It's all based on income. This cap rate is 20% cap rate. This property is worth $48,000. That's a 20% cap rate. So if I sold that to someone that said, hey, I'm looking for a 20% cap rate, the most I could sell that would be for $48,000 to give them that 20%. Now, am I going to sell it for $48,000?
No.
No, because the comps won't support it. They're not going to look at it that way. But will they pay a little bit higher if somebody's in there, it's turnkey? Sure they will. I know they will. But at $400,000, I've got a 26% cap rate. $400 a month. Okay? So this deal right here, once I put the rehab in it, I've got $36,000 in it. All in. That's the top of the market, in my opinion. So this is going to be a buy and hold for me, and I'll have a hard time. If I buy it for this, I'm going to have a hell of a time trying to get rid of it if I want to sell it to another investor. Does that make sense to everyone? So where must I buy it? If I want to make 10 grand off of this deal and give somebody a good, knowing the numbers in the neighborhood are 34,000, that's the top. Okay? This is a math class. So I've got to buy somewhere below this. Somewhere below $26,000. Put my 10 in. So me, if we offer it, if she takes $7,500, It's below that. It's below the 12,000. It's below $500 a month. It's probably closer to $550 or $560 a month. You see that? I don't go that low on this evaluation sheet. But if I pay her $7,500, do you think for a minute, based on this, I could put somebody in there and sell it for a higher price and use this evaluator as a selling tool for them? Hey, this is what you're getting. Let me show you the numbers. You think it would be to your advantage, and they would look at this and go, oh, I see that. And they would buy based on your knowledge of your numbers, rather than just put it on a piece of paper and say, oh yeah, you're getting 20%. Most people don't even know how to figure cap rate. They don't. Most people don't even understand what it is. I didn't for the longest time. But do you see how this is a good evaluation now, and where do we need to be as far as evaluating deals?
When you put all the numbers in there, you did put in cap rate at all, this system, did they have the numbers you put in, does it populate cap rate?
Does not populate cap rate. I did have a cap rate in there. So let's say, now Timmy said 11%. $11% cap rate means this is the value of this property is $87,000. Now, 11% cap rate is great for a commercial. On a residential property, not so much. But do you think there are people out there that aren't as savvy that look at 11 or 12 or 50% cap rate and say, hey, that's pretty good? Yes?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And all it is, you're looking at.
Absolutely. And it is if you're of the financial mindset and that's what you're looking at. As investors, me, I don't look at that. I don't look at the cap rate. I look at how much money am I making each month? Does it make a difference in my life? Yes.
Just real quick, could you just explain what a cap rate is?
Sure. Simple. Cap rate, capitalization rate, is the annual net operating income, which is this number up here. Net operating income, 9,600, divided by all of your expenses, not the mortgage. Assuming there's no mortgage. Does that make sense? It's on here. Here's the definitions down here. There's your... And you don't really need to understand cap rate. It's not important for you to really understand what it is. And the only thing you really need to understand about it is that people value that number. Okay? They value that number. And that's how they evaluate whether a deal is good or not based on cap rate.
I've written it down numerous times in the past, but you said it was net operating income divided by expenses?
Yeah.
Oh, no,
Cost or value, the cost of it. So if you're paying, like I said, $7,500, because your net operating income is already have the expenses taken out,
Right.
but it's what you're paying for.
Right.
So like in this case, $7,500, or whatever you're paying for.
So you say this is usually used on commercial property, multi-family property?
No, what I'm saying is people have a tendency to use cap rate on commercial as a valuation, as one of the main evaluators of a commercial. I'm just taking that same mindset and applying it to single-family homes because that's really where we are in this economy. Because you can't base it off of this number right here. Because if this number really, because have you ever seen a house that's selling for $10,000 next to a, or in your case, $100,000 next to a $800,000 house? Of course. So they're not apples and oranges. I mean, they're not apples to apples. They're apples and oranges. So it's hard to evaluate, and that's where most people go, I just don't get it. I don't understand because I don't want to make a mistake. If you use something like this, you're not going to make a mistake because you're basing it off of hard, factual data. Your guesswork, there is no guesswork. You're not just grabbing something out of thin air and saying, I think it's worth this. You have an actual value. Now, you have to be smart about this and say, okay, 11% cap rate, if somebody tells me they'll buy whatever I got for 11% cap rate, well, 11% cap rate puts the value at $87,000. Are you going to charge them $87,000 for a house that on a great day is worth that? Of course you won't. So you're going to base it off of some of the comps. You gotta use some common sense. Yes.
I was gonna say, I think the easy way to